The Abdication Speech of King Edward VIII by Laura Williams. King Edward VIII was the only monarch in history to abdicate from the British royal throne. His abdication speech, eloquent and heartfelt, passed the power on to his unwilling brother, the Duke of York. Turning down the throne for an American woman's love, he was forced to choose between the two, being the head of the Church of England, as she was previously divorced multiple times. King Edward drafted a short farewell speech to be broadcast over radio that would not only cite his reasons for leaving, but raise faith in his brother, who would be next in line for the king. In his speech, he utilized the medium of the radio to distribute his message, sharply changing the method in which he writes his speech. Speaking clearly and eloquently, he emphasizes evidence for the decision, with phrases such as, "The decision I have made has been made mine and mine alone," and "to do without the help and support of the woman I love." He also gives his successor credibility to support his claim to the throne by cataloging his qualities and ability to rule, such as his long training in the public affairs of his country and his fine qualities. During his mention to his brother, who would later become King George, he again mentions his wife and children and how the speaker wishes for the same thing that his brother has. His scattered use of ethical appeals throughout the entire speech and references to his people and God Save the King gave support for not only his future successor, but also establishes Edward as one of the audience and one of the people, giving his reasons even more credibility. It also makes him seem much more relatable. His decision to leave the throne for his future wife also establishes an emotional connection through emotional appeals to the audience due to the typical love story that occurs in his frequent references to love and how it affects him and his children. Edward focused primarily on a few topics throughout his speech. He focused on his brother, his wife, citing his reasons for leaving the throne, and often quotes his people. He also explains his love for his country. By focusing on these topics, he not only establishes reasons through logic why he had to leave the throne, but appeals to the emotion of the audience through tales of his wife and his profound love, and how, even though he loves his country, he could not live a life that he was happy in there. His wording throughout the entire speech was very powerful, focusing on many ethical appeals, but also citing how the crown was a burden, and how, using words such as judge and constitutional to help emphasize how the crown itself weighed so heavily upon him. Emphasis on the word's decision as well also showed how he greatly deliberated this topic. The random arrangement of these topics, how they scattered throughout, as opposed to a strict progression of events, provides a more casual feel to the speech and helps him to look more relatable.
Able to say a few words of my own. I have never wanted to withhold anything. But until now, it has not been constitutionally possible for me to speak. A few hours ago, I discharged my last duty as King and Emperor. And now that I have been succeeded by my brother,
as you can hear from the speech, the simpler wording and slower tempo allowed for the audience to gain a greater understanding of the speech instead of jumbled together words. His use of these powerful words lets his message reverberate through the reader to a greater extent. Overall, King Edward's abdication speech was one of the more powerful speeches of the time. Maintaining the short length keeps it frank and does not bore the audience with hour-long explanations and overly eloquent words. Instead, it creates a short message powerful to the audience in which he sets up the throne for a successor and follows his heart.